I used to think justice would feel like thunder, like something loud and earth-shattering. I thought when the verdict was read, something would break open inside me. Maybe I'd cry. Maybe I'd scream. Maybe I'd finally sleep through the night. But when the jury foreman said, "Guilty on all counts," I just sat there. My hands clenched on my thighs. My jaw so tight it felt like stone. There was no thunder. No crack of lightning. Only silence. My mother wept beside me. The prosecutor placed a hand on my shoulder. I don't remember looking at either of them. I only remember the dull ache in my chest and the echo of chains as my stepfather was led away. I was 17. It had taken 4 years to bring him to trial. 4 years of backtracking, of doubting myself, of pretending I was just a weird, quiet kid with a bad attitude. I got good at disappearing. At school. At home. In mirrors. Testifying was the hardest thing I'd ever done. It was also the easiest. Once I started, I couldn't stop. The words poured out, ugly and hot, decades older than I was. I told them about the bruises. The threats. The times he pressed me into the wall with breath like whiskey and hands like steel traps. I told them about the night I locked myself in the bathroom and called 911 with shaking fingers. The courtroom was cold. Too cold. My voice echoed in that silence, cracking open ghosts. And yet, when it was all over, I didn't feel free. I felt hollow. Like something had been scooped out and left in that courtroom with him. I thought maybe it was my fear. But it wasn't. My fear came home with me. It followed me into adulthood, quiet and patient. The dreams started a few months after the trial. At first, they were fragments. A long hallway. A spotlight. A wooden chair. Then the details came. I was the one in the defendant's seat. Shackled. Pale. Surrounded by faceless jurors. A judge whose gavel sounded like my stepfather's laugh. Every night, I was tried for something I couldn't name. No one said what I'd done. Only that I was guilty. Always guilty. And when the sentence came down, it was silence. That same damn silence from the real trial. And I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my throat raw, as if I'd been screaming. I never remembered screaming. By 25, I had a decent life. On paper, anyway. A steady job. A small apartment. A girlfriend who loved me more than I could understand. I told her some of it. Not all. Never all. I still kept most of it locked away, like rusted boxes in an attic. Safer that way. Less dangerous. She asked once, in the quiet of a Sunday morning, "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" I remember freezing. My coffee halfway to my lips. "Why would I do that?" She shrugged. "Not for him. For you. To let it go. Let it go. Like it was something I carried in my pocket. Like it didn't live under my skin." I didn't answer. I just kissed her forehead and changed the subject. It was my mother who asked next. She called out of the blue, 6 years after the sentencing. Her voice sounded older. Tired. Like something had deflated in her. "He wrote me a letter," she said. I didn't respond. "He says he's found God. That he's changed. He asked if he could write to you." The silence between us stretched. I told him I'd ask. I laughed. I actually laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that felt like breaking glass. "You're joking, right?" "No," she said quietly. "I'm not." And just like that, I was 17 again. Sitting on a witness stand, heart hammering, voice shaking. I said no. I told her. Tell him to go to hell. But the dreams got worse after that. Now, there was fire in the courtroom. The judge's robes burned. The jurors wept blood. My mouth was sewn shut, and when they said, "Guilty," I nodded. As if I agreed. I woke up gasping, the sheets tangled around me like restraints. I stopped sleeping through the night. Stopped seeing my girlfriend. Stopped returning calls. Something was breaking. And I didn't know how to stop it. Then came the second letter. Not from him. From a pastor at a prison ministry. He said my stepfather had confessed to everything. That he was undergoing counseling. That he spoke of me often, called me his son. The letter ended with a plea. He's not asking for anything but your forgiveness. Even if you never speak to him. Even if you never reply. Forgiveness is a strange God, the pastor wrote. It asks nothing. And everything. I read that line over and over until the words blurred. Forgiveness is a strange God. That night, I stood in my bathroom, hands gripping the sink, staring into the mirror. My face looked older than it should have. My eyes darker. Like someone who'd survived a fire but never escaped the smoke. "What the hell do you want from me?" I whispered. And the dream came again. Only this time, the judge leaned forward. Pulled back his hood. It was me. Staring at myself. And for the first time, I understood. The trial had never ended. And I was both judge and prisoner. They say time heals everything. Whoever said that never watched time rot instead of repair. After the letter from the pastor, I didn't respond. I threw it in a drawer. But it stayed there like a live wire, buzzing at the edge of my awareness. I could feel it through the wood. Like a pulse. Every morning, I'd walk past that drawer and flinch. I thought about writing back. Telling the pastor what kind of man my stepfather really was. What he took from me. But I didn't. Because if I started, I wouldn't stop. And the rage wasn't a river anymore, it was tar. Slow. Suffocating. And then came the transfer. My job moved me to a new city. A few states over. Somewhere quieter, colder. I took it without thinking. I wanted distance. From the past. From the people who knew me as a story instead of a person. The apartment was small. Clean. Anonymous. And yet the dreams followed. One night, the dream changed. I wasn't in the courtroom. I was in a cell. Gray walls. No door. A bed bolted to the floor. The kind of place he might have slept now. Only I was the one in it. And across from me, outside the bars, was a boy. 12 maybe? My age when it started. He didn't say anything. Just stared. And I couldn't meet his eyes. When I woke up, I couldn't breathe. It was like the air had turned to cement. I stumbled to the bathroom and threw up. It kept happening. Always the same cell. The same boy. Sometimes he was crying. Sometimes he looked disappointed. Once he asked, "Why didn't you save me?" I didn't know how to answer. Months passed. My days became routines. Efficient. Numb. Wake up. Work. Eat. Avoid. I went to therapy. Twice. I lied through most of it. She asked good questions, that therapist. Too good. The kind that made your gut clench. I told her I was doing okay. Managing. Healing. That word made her smile. But I was lying. And I think she knew. Then came the email. Short. Simple. He's dying. From the same pastor. Said it was pancreatic. Said he had months. Maybe weeks. Said he still talked about me. Said he still prayed for forgiveness. I closed the email and went for a walk. Ended up outside a church. Not mine. Not his. Just a place. I didn't go inside. Just stared at the door. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the sky to change. The next dream was different. I was the judge again. The boy was gone. It was just me and him. My stepfather. In the defendant's chair. Looking small. Frail. No shackles. And I opened my mouth to speak. But no words came. Only tears. Not his. Mine. I woke up sobbing. Couldn't stop. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the first time I realized I wanted to stop being angry. I didn't know if I could. But I wanted to try. I opened the drawer the next morning. The letter was still there. I read it again. Slowly. Word by word. and I began to write back. Not to him. To myself. A letter to the boy in the cell. I'm sorry. I did the best I could. I didn't know how to protect you. But I'm trying now. You didn't deserve any of it. You are not broken. You are not guilty. It was a beginning. And maybe that's all forgiveness really is. A beginning. The letter I wrote to the boy in the cell, I never mailed it, never burned it. I folded it like something sacred and taped it behind my bathroom mirror. Every morning, I'd catch a glimpse of its edges, like a secret trying to speak. And I started asking myself the questions I was too afraid to hear. What if I wasn't just angry at him? What if I was angry at her? My mother. For not seeing. For seeing and doing nothing. For staying with him. For telling me to forgive. What if I was angry at myself? What if part of me still believed I deserved it? The dreams returned, but slower now. Softer. Like something with bruised wings learning to fly again. This time the courtroom was gone. So was the cell. Instead, I stood on a hill. A tall one, under a sky that never ended. Wind in my hair. Barefoot. There was a door in the ground. I never opened it. Just stood there, knowing something waited beneath. When I woke, I sat on the floor for a long time, staring at the space beneath my bed. 2 days later, my mother called again. I let it ring 4 times before picking up. She didn't say hello. He's asked to see you. One last time. I didn't respond. I waited. You don't have to, she added quickly. I told him I'd ask. Why does he get a goodbye? I asked. My voice was calm. Hollow. She was silent for so long I thought the line had dropped. Because maybe you do, she said. I didn't answer her. I didn't hang up. I just sat there, listening to her breathing, both of us tethered by something invisible and aching. The next morning, I called the pastor. If I come, I said, I'm not doing it for him. I know, he said. You're doing it for the boy in the cell. The prison was 5 hours away. I drove without music. Without podcasts. Just the hum of the tires and the questions in my chest. What would I say? Would I scream? Would I walk away? Would I feel nothing at all? The pastor met me outside. He was tall, older than I remembered. Or maybe I was just older now. Wiser in all the worst ways. He's in the hospice wing, he said. He doesn't look like what you remember. Good, I muttered. He held the door. The room smelled of bleach and endings. And there he was. Gray. Sunken. Small. Nothing like the monster who haunted my dreams. Nothing like the shadow that used to blacken doorways and whisper rage into my skin. Just a dying man with too many years carved into his face. His eyes met mine. He tried to smile. It didn't work. You came, he rasped. I sat. Slowly. My hands didn't tremble. Don't thank me. He didn't. He just looked at me like I was a ghost. Maybe I was. Maybe we both were. I was a bad man, he said. I said nothing. I was sick. Mean. I hurt people I should have protected. I know that. Still, I said nothing. I found God, he whispered. But I don't expect that to mean anything to you. He looked at the ceiling. I don't even know why I wanted to see you. Maybe to say sorry. Maybe to see what kind of man you became. You don't get that, I said quietly. You don't get to measure the damage. He nodded. Closed his eyes. Do you hate me? He asked. I sat with the question. Let it fill the air like smoke. I did, I said. For a long time. He looked at me then. Really looked. There was no victory in his face. No hope. Just sorrow. I don't know if I forgive you, I added. I don't think you deserve it. But I think I deserve peace. He nodded again. His lips trembled. Thank you, he whispered. I stood. And I walked out. I didn't look back. That night I dreamed again. The door in the ground was open, and the boy was waiting beside it. He smiled, and we stepped inside. Together. There's this strange thing that happens when someone dies. You expect something to shift. A thunderclap, maybe? Or a cold breeze through the window. But death is quieter than that. Sometimes it's just a phone call with too much static. He passed 3 days after I visited. My mother called again. This time, she cried. Not the howling kind of grief. Not guilt either. Just the ache of something unfixable. I'm sorry, she said. For everything. I didn't know what to say. I didn't protect you. I told myself I couldn't. But the truth is, I didn't want to believe it. I was too afraid. It was the first time she admitted it. And for a long moment, I hated her all over again. Then the hate passed, like a fever breaking. Because I was tired. Because there was nothing left to burn. I know, I said. I know. I didn't go to the funeral. If there even was one. I didn't ask. But I kept dreaming. The boy and I walked through the door together. What was beneath it wasn't fire. It wasn't hell. It was memory. A long hallway with doors on either side. Each one marked with a year. A moment. A wound. He looked at me. Waited. And I knew what he wanted. To open them. We started with 2009. The smell of cigarettes. The dark living room. Me on the floor with a busted lip. Him towering, belt still in hand. I stepped into the room, heart pounding. But the boy didn't look afraid. He walked right up to the scene, placed his small hand on my shoulder. It wasn't your fault, he said. I wept. The dreams came night after night, like chapters. We walked through every locked room. The birthday I spent hiding in the closet. The time he broke my phone for texting a friend. The night he told me I was a mistake. Each one we opened. Faced. Named. It didn't make the pain vanish. But it gave it shape. It made it something I could carry without breaking. In waking life, I changed too. I started journaling. Not about him. About me. About the things I liked. The music that made me feel alive. The smell of rain on concrete. The thrill of watching a stranger's dog run wild in the park. I saw my therapist again. This time, I told her the truth. All of it. She didn't try to fix me. She just listened. And somewhere in that silence, I started to breathe again. The biggest shift came one morning, months later. I caught myself laughing. Really laughing. It was something stupid. A video online. A dog wearing sunglasses. But the sound that came out of me, it was real. Free. Whole. And it terrified me. Because for the first time, I realized I didn't feel guilty for feeling good. That night, I dreamed one last time. The hallway was empty now. All the doors stood open. And at the far end, there was a window. Light poured through it. The boy stood there, older now. Almost my age. He turned to me. "We're done," he said. And we stepped into the light. Forgiveness didn't come like a lightning bolt. It came like dawn. Slow. Reluctant. I didn't give it to him. Not exactly. I gave it to myself. And that, I think, is the strange God the pastor spoke of. A God who demands nothing, but asks everything. I stopped dreaming for a while. At first, it felt like a loss. I'd grown used to the boy's presence, to our nightly walks through memory. The silence was disorienting. But slowly it began to feel like something else. Peace. Not loud. Not triumphant. Just quiet. I moved apartments. Not because I needed to, but because I could. It felt symbolic. Like shedding an old skin. I packed my things slowly, and when I peeled the note from behind the mirror, the one I'd written to the boy in the cell, I didn't cry. I placed it gently into a small box I labeled, "Things I chose to keep." One afternoon, I visited the lake. It was a place I hadn't returned to since childhood. He used to take us there sometimes. On good days. or what I thought were good days. I remember skipping rocks, watching the clouds blur with the water. For a while, it had been one of the few places that felt safe. Now, it felt like a question I was ready to answer. I sat on the edge of the dock for hours. No music. No distractions. Just the wind and the birds and the shifting shimmer of the lake. I spoke aloud. Not to him. To the boy. We made it out. You and me. We made it. The wind picked up. The trees danced. The lake held my reflection. For the first time, I didn't look away. Weeks passed. I wrote letters I never intended to send. To my mother. To myself. Even one to the pastor. Not to blame, but to thank. For being a bridge when I couldn't find my footing. I started running again. Not to escape. Just to feel my heart. My breath. My legs carrying me forward. I started living in my body again. And one night, as I lay in bed, the silence felt full instead of empty. It happened without warning. The dream returned. But it was different now. No hallways. No judges. No fire. Just a beach. Endless and gold. The boy was there, laughing. Running toward the water. I ran after him, and when I caught up, we stood side by side, watching the sun. He turned to me. "It's yours now," he said. I didn't ask what. I didn't need to. I woke with the sun on my face. Grief and healing are strange siblings. One doesn't wait for the other to finish. They walk hand in hand, whispering in turns. But sometimes, when they fall quiet, you can hear something else. Hope. Not the naive kind. The earned kind. The kind that comes after war. I still have scars. But I don't hide them anymore. They're not warnings. They're maps. And they led me here. I never legally changed my last name. I told myself for years it was because the paperwork was too much of a hassle. Too much time. Too much red tape. But the truth was harder. I didn't want to see his name disappear. Not because I wanted to honor him. Because I needed a reminder. A scar etched in letters. But scars fade. And one day, I realized the only thing tying me to that name was fear. Fear of forgetting. Fear of forgiving. Fear of moving so far forward that the past could no longer reach me. But I was tired of fear. I'd spent enough nights whispering to ghosts. So I went to the courthouse. Stood in a line with strangers. Filled out a form. Signed my new name like it was a declaration of war and peace, all at once. I chose my mother's maiden name. She cried when I told her. "Thank you," she said, "for letting me be a part of your healing." It was the first time I truly believed she'd started healing, too. The day the paperwork came back approved, I went to a quiet bar on the edge of town. I ordered one drink. Just one. To toast the boy. To toast the man I was becoming. To toast the middle spaces, the ones where the pain never really leaves, but somehow you learn to dance with it. I looked at my ID. My new name. And I smiled. "There you are," I said. I started painting again. It was something I hadn't done since I was a kid. He hated when I did it. Said it was soft. Wasteful. Unmanly. Now I filled canvases with oceans and fire escapes and shadowed faces I didn't recognize but somehow knew. Each stroke was like a breath. A word in a language I forgot I spoke. I got a letter from the pastor. Short. Kind. He wrote, "Some people live their whole lives never getting free. You did the impossible." I don't know if that's true. I still wake up sometimes with a clenched jaw. Still flinch at loud voices. Still hesitate before trusting. But maybe freedom isn't the absence of fear. Maybe it's walking into the light anyway. I haven't had a dream in weeks. But sometimes I sit on my porch and imagine the boy walking ahead of me, barefoot and fearless, carving a path I once thought I'd never find. And now I walk it too. Grief doesn't evaporate. It just learns to sit beside you more quietly. I thought by now I'd be done with it. But grief doesn't play by rules. It flares at the oddest moments, smells, songs, the way someone shouts across a street. But it doesn't own me anymore. It just visits. And I've learned not to flinch. Elise and I took a trip to the coast. It was off-season. Empty beaches. Wind that tasted like salt and thyme. We stayed in a crooked cottage that creaked at night. I loved it more than I expected. One morning, I woke up before her. Made coffee. Stepped outside with a blanket around my shoulders. And I thought about him. About the version of him I knew. The broken one. The cruel one. I thought about the version of me that still feared him. And then I said it out loud. I forgive you. There was no audience. No echo. Just gulls and wind. I didn't say it for him. I said it for me. And in the stillness that followed, I felt my body exhale in a way it never had. Later, Elise stirred awake and joined me. We sat without talking for a long while. Then she asked, "What's different today?" And I told her. She held my hand. Not like a reward. Not like I'd accomplished something. Just because she was there. And I wept. Not because I was broken. Because I wasn't. That afternoon, I took a long walk by myself. Found a patch of titipools and crouched beside them like a child. A crab scuttled past my shoe. Tiny fish darted like secrets. The world, still turning, still alive. I whispered to the boy who used to hide under beds. "Look at us now." And I imagined him smiling. Back home, I visited the lake again. Not out of nostalgia. Out of ritual. I brought nothing. Said nothing. Just stood with the trees and the sky and the stillness. Then I let go of one last thing. The guilt of surviving. I let it float out over the water like mist. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly light. There's still pain. There always will be. But there's more room around it now. More life. More softness. And that's the thing no one tells you. Forgiveness doesn't end the story. It lets you write the rest. It began with a voicemail. My cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, reached out. He'd heard through the family that I was doing better. That I was, in his words, someone who made it through. He didn't say why he called. Not directly. But I heard it in the way he spoke, halting, almost afraid. I think some of the same things happened to me. I never talked about it. I didn't think I was allowed. He didn't need to explain. I knew that silence. I'd lived inside it. I called him back the next day. We talked for hours. No script. No expectations. Just the truth, unfiltered and clumsy. He cried. I did too. And for the first time, I understood what survival could offer, not just peace for myself, but permission for someone else. I started speaking more. A local group invited me to share my story. Survivors. Advocates. Therapists. Strangers who understood the language of harm and healing. I said yes. Standing on that stage, my palms were slick with sweat. My throat trembled on the first few words. But then, I found rhythm. I found breath. I found the sound of my own voice, unashamed and steady. Afterward, a woman in her 60s hugged me and said, "I never told anyone until tonight." Thank you. We held hands in silence. Elise painted a mural in our town. Waves and branches and sky. She added one small boy standing in a field of light. I asked her what it meant. "It's you," she said. "But also everyone who's learning to live again." I visited often. Some days just to remind myself that I made it through. Some days to remember others still need that reminder. Forgiveness was never the end. It was the gate. Beyond it, there were roads I hadn't dreamed of. People I hadn't met. Versions of myself I hadn't dared to become. Each one waiting. Each one wholly in their unfinishedness. I sleep easily now. Not always, but enough. The boy in my dreams has grown up. I don't see him as often. When I do, he's building something, out of sand, out of sky, out of everything that never managed to destroy us. My cousin visited last month. We went back to the lake. He stood where I had stood years ago. He didn't say much, just looked out and whispered, "I think I'm ready." I nodded. He didn't need to explain. Sometimes healing means becoming the voice you never had. Sometimes it means listening when others finally find theirs. I'm still learning how to hold both. And maybe that's what forgiveness is, too. Not release. Not forgetting. But holding the echo of your pain, gently, until it begins to sound like a song. The seasons turned. The days grew longer. It's funny how time softens the edges of things. Not by erasing them, but by showing you how to live around them. The wound doesn't disappear, it just stops bleeding. I kept living. Elise and I moved into a bigger place. Nothing grand. Just a home with more windows than shadows. One morning, I found her in the kitchen, humming. She wore one of my old sweaters and had flour on her nose. And I realized I didn't feel haunted anymore. I felt held. I still speak. Not just at meetings, but to kids sometimes. Teenagers who remind me of who I used to be. Tense. Angry. Quiet. One of them asked me, "Do you think it ever really goes away? The pain?" And I told him the truth. No. But it changes. It stops being a weapon. Becomes a tool. A reminder of how strong you are. He nodded. Didn't speak. But the way his shoulders lowered told me everything. The mural Elise painted started fading. Sun and rain wore the colors down. People offered to repaint it, restore it. But she said, "Let it fade. That's part of the story too." So we let it. And somehow, that felt like a different kind of healing. My mother and I talk more now. Carefully. Honestly. She apologized again, recently. For the silence. For the complicity. This time, I didn't need to say anything back. Because I'd already forgiven her. Not out loud. Not all at once. But piece by piece over years. That's how real forgiveness works. I went back to the courthouse last week. Not for legal reasons. Just to walk the halls. To see the room where I first told the truth. It was smaller than I remembered. Colder, too. But I stood in the doorway, placed a hand against the frame, and whispered, "Thank you?" Not to the place. To the boy who stood there once, terrified and defiant. To the voice that broke through fear. To the fire that didn't consume me. I walked out into the sunlight, blinking. There were children playing on the courthouse lawn. Their laughter rose and fell like music. And I smiled. Not because everything was perfect. But because it didn't need to be. I had learned how to live inside the imperfection. How to grow something out of the ash. How to kneel before the God of forgiveness and say, "I understand now." It was never about forgetting. It was never about him. It was about me. About the boy. About the man I became. About choosing to stay. The past doesn't vanish. But it no longer owns me. And that, finally, feels like freedom. Something like light.